Miniseries of Knuckles Issue 2. So the desert Knuckles and Archimedes were sent to just has to be Sandopolis Zone, huh? It can't be just any random desert. That does mean they're on Angel Island, right? The writers were aware that Sandopolis was on Angel Island, right? Well, I guess so, considering what happens later. I'm not sure how Knuckles and Archimedes know which desert they're in, though, just because they're in a desert. Knuckles mentions that he might be in the desert for days and he could risk dying of starvation there, making me wonder why Jack didn't just kill him if that's why he sent him here. And he gets attacked by a giant sandcrawler that tracks its prey by body heat. That's interesting. Archimedes immediately shows off why he's called a fire ant by breathing fire at it, which immediately makes me respect him a lot more for having a useful power like that. And he acts as a distraction for the sandcrawler to make it crash into the giant rocks. We then cut to Knuckles at night warming up food on a stick with Archimedes' fire. I'm guessing that food is their means to the sandcrawler. It's kind of heartwarming to see them forming a bond of friendship with each other like that. But sadly immediately ruined by Archimedes giving exposition that we were already told multiple times by this point. We know why the island is floating by now. Knuckles knows by now. Get to the point. What a waste of perfectly good comic paper. Apparently, we're expected to believe that the only reason Angel Island had floated above the ground was because fire ants had lifted up the island from beneath. Oh, so the infinite power of the Chaos Emeralds wasn't good enough? Also, why did all those fire ants know to coordinate themselves to do this? Why did they want to do this? It seems very unnecessary. It would make more sense if Archimedes was lying off his ass, or if the fire ants had made up that factoid just to feel good about themselves. But we're never told that. Right after we're reminded about Dimitri's origin, wasting some more comic space. Apparently, we've got some historical revisionism here, because Archimedes thinks that Dimitri sent the power of the emeralds into himself on purpose. Wasn't the whole reason he went to that Chaos Chamber himself because he wanted to bring the island back down? And how is he supposed to know the energy would go from the Chaos Siphon to himself, rather than being constrained to this Chaos Siphon? I guess he's just making a false assumption. I also find it hard to believe that the Fire Ant people have been helping out the echidnas like charity workers for generations. What's in it for them? The Archie Sonic universe is not a bright and cheery idealistic one. So, that's hardly it. What are they, like the Minish, where they devote their culture to helping giants because it gives them energy? Maybe it's just a religious belief or something in their culture that they should help the echidnas just for the sake of it. Like they're a servant race to them or something. But why would they have such a subservient belief themselves instead of being forced into it like slaves? Why wouldn't they think helping their own kind is a higher priority? So Archimedes explains that he had been testing Knuckles to make sure he'd be up to the tasks that lie ahead. So he predicted that Jack would send him to Knuckles to Sandopolis specifically instead of killing him or something? He predicted all of these tasks ahead of time? So he's a psychic too? Why didn't he just open the door for Knuckles instead of making him destroy it to release Jack in the first place then? If he's a psychic, then why was Jack freed? Well, I doubt that is it, and they're just being stupid. He explains to Knuckles that Dimitri had reappeared as Jack, captured the fire ants. Oh, the next panel reveals he was just reiterating what we already know. That Jack dumped him and Knuckles in this desert out of spite. Why did he even say this in universe if they both already knew it? Also, I don't like how Knuckles literally tries to eat his partner later on. I know he's hungry, so maybe he's delirious, but he knows that's a sentient being. That's just disturbing. At least his reaction to it is really appropriate. It's a pretty funny line, actually. Well, Dimitri, Jack, tries to set up the site of his future city rather than taking over one that's already been built to be faster about it. Knuckles hallucinates his father, encouraging him because he's so hot from the desert. And then both him and his friend hallucinate the oasis at the exact same time. Either that or Jack did this just to mess with them, but if he knew they were there, wouldn't he have attacked them or something? Also, why did he send his main enemies to the exact same place where he was going to build his city? I guess the reason he built his own city was because he can do that so fast anyways. And the reason why he chose Sandopolis was because it was on Angel Island. So it would be best to recreate his echidna home there. Knuckles runs into the city full of robots, again, just like Robotropolis. He's too damn similar to Eggman. And Knuckles closes the gate behind him to prevent the robots from going after him. Well, those were some useless robots. That wasn't really a high-stakes threat. Archimedes points out that it's been too easy so far. Well, yes, it has. And immediately Knuckles gets punched by the Chaotix, who, as I predicted, have been brainwashed. Although you could have also guessed that they had been turned into green statues based on the lack of information and them only appearing in one panel afterwards in issue 1. Sadly, the issue ends right then and there. So I guess the fate worse than death that Dimitri was planning was that Knuckles would be beaten to death by his own friends ganging up on him. He's vastly overestimating his emotional attachment to a bunch of guys he's almost just met. I think he's known Mighty for a while, but the rest of them are practically strangers. I doubt this would cause too much turmoil to him. And if Dimitri thinks he has infinite power already, why would he ever need to use the Chaotix? Why not just kill them all and fight by yourself? Is he really that dedicated to making Knuckles fight his friends just to be a dick? Well, killing him would also be something he could do just to be a dick. But if he did that, then there would be no story. He has all this power and he's not allowed to be competent with it, because if he was, he would have already won. Also, I think the reason I keep calling him Dimitri is because Enerjack sounds more like the name of a villain concept, a fancy title. Well, Dimitri is an actual name for a person, so I'll probably just call him Dimitri most of the time. This issue was written by Ken Penders and Mike Kantorovich. I don't feel like much happened in the story plot-wise. Archimedes gave Knuckles some exposition, most of which is stuff we already know, making it a worthless waste of comic space. But you can just skip that emotionally and shrug it off. It's not like it's a whole bunch of plot holes that would be really frustrating. The only new thing we learned was that apparently if it weren't for the Fire Ant people, Angel Island wouldn't have lifted off the ground. Because, you know, the power of the Chaos Emeralds weren't enough. Other than the exposition dump, which again, you could just skip it emotionlessly, what happens here? Knuckles finds the fortress of Dimitri effortlessly when I expected him to go through way more trials and tribulations after leaving a desert. He finds the Chaotix brainwashed and the story ends. 3 things happened here. It also drives home how short the issue is that so little happened. At least the Sally and Tails miniseries had their first and second issues still feel like fully fledged stories. Gee, when they called it a miniseries, they really fucking meant it. So far, this miniseries is meh to me, easily the worst of the miniseries so far. There's nothing that makes me understand why it'd be viewed as a horrible tragedy, but it certainly feels hollow, empty, and underwhelming. I wonder if the 3rd issue will have the actual story finally start.